My name is McGear McCartney. Welcome to this very first, they call it a podcast, okay? And this is my Drink a Drink podcast. And I've got a very special guest for you today who's come a long, long way. Not from Liverpool to the Wirral, not from Birmingham to up here, from London up here, not from Paris, not from India, not from Vietnam, but from, bit of a hint, Australasia. Okay, has that got you going? It is. Ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce you to the unbelievable, the very talented, the very funny. He plays sports like rugby and tennis. The shortest way. He's a great television host, genius. He is indeed the unforgettable. What's your name again?
Adam Hills.
That's it. Adam. Him over there. Live.
What a lovely introduction. Had you planned that out?
I forgot most of it.
Because it felt like your brain started with he hasn't come from Liverpool, and then it got further and further away. But as you were doing it, I was watching you thinking, is this geographically correct?
So he's lost.
And then you went India, and then you went Vietnam, and I was like, no,
it's
each one of them, it is.
So this is our Adam, ladies and gentlemen.
Do you know what? You saying our Adam, I mean, people watching won't know that I met you, a year ago?
That long?
But we've decided that we're family.
Yeah, we are.
And we have kind of become family.
You're just our Australasian form of family.
Well, and to the point where it feels weird, because I know you know this, but for people watching, I've met almost all of your kids now.
Yeah.
One in Australia.
Yeah.
Abby.
Yeah.
And we met at the Bristol Slapstick Festival last year.
Slapstick Festival.
But I think it was one of those things where I had just left my family behind in Australia after 6 weeks of Christmas together. And I came over here and I was a little bit stranded. And we did this festival, and you and your sons, Max and Josh were there. And you kind of just...
Sonny, did you meet Sonny
And then I met Sonny later down the track. But then we all just kind of hung out for a weekend, and I felt bad that I'd glommed onto your family.
Sonny, I could talk to this, couldn't I?
Yeah.
Refer to that. Talking to me, hello, how are you? Fine, thanks, how are you, Mike? But this, Adam has an affinity with Sonny because Sonny lost his leg in an accident.
Yes.
And you lost your leg at birth.
Yes.
So they have a tie that only people that understand, that are in that position, that unique position, will sympathise with.
Yeah.
Will be part of.
He's amazing. It turned out we had competed at the same disability triathlon together.
Yeah, that's right.
Before I'd met you or knew him.
Yeah.
So there's this lovely family bond, and I remember saying to you, I feel like I glommed onto your family for that weekend, and then it was either you or it was Josh said, oh no, we've started calling you our Adam.
Yeah, that's right.
And it's so, I have to say it in your accent, because our Adam doesn't, if I say it in an Australian accent, our Adam,
well, I wouldn't.
It doesn't have the same resonance as if you say it.
I can't do it in Australian.
Yes, you can.
No, I can't. Now, do you realise that it's called Drink a Drink for a purpose? Mm-hmm. Okay?
Yeah.
Now, I've asked my guests, and I've asked you, what you prefer to drink. I'm having a lovely full glass of Pinot Noir, a red wine, a very nice one.
Yeah.
You've chosen?
I've gone with an iced coffee.
A nice coffee.
An iced coffee.
A nice coffee. Very good.
I've been off the booze for a little while. And I find people...
So I. I'll just drink to that. Cheers, Adam.
Cheers.
Cheers. Click. We did it, Josh. Josh is my producer, by the way. Joshua McCartney. Very talented lad.
He's very good. I find that...
By the way, if towards this end of this interview, I am out of my head, then you've got to forgive me.
I'm here for you. I stopped drinking. I took a break from drinking a while ago and quite enjoyed it, so I stuck with it. But I find that if I say to people I don't drink, they kind of look at you kind of strangely. But if I say I'm off the booze, they kind of like, oh, well, if you call it booze, you must have had a good relationship to it. So, okay. It's yeah.
Crazy. Now, what I've done is I have compiled a list of questions here.
Yeah.
To you, it might look like a liver bird.
It does.
But it's a list of questions that I have done. I've done research on you, Adam Faith. And the first question, I'll tell everyone at home. You're Adam Christopher Hills, MBE.
Yes.
Ooh. I'm just a mere BEM.
I don't know.
I'm a BEM.
What
British Empire Medal.
What outranks what? I don't know.
I think you're
Okay.
posher than me. You were born July 10th, 1970. You're only 54?
I'm 54.
That's right. You were born in Loftus, Sydney?
Yes, that's correct.
Good. That's Australia, by the way. You married Ali McGregor.
Yes.
She's Scottish?
Scottish heritage.
I think so. 2009. You've got Maisie and Beatrice. You are in Oz. You're famous as a host of Spick and Specks.
Yes.
Correct.
I need to explain that very briefly, if you don't mind.
Yes, please.
So Spicks and Specks is a music quiz show.
Yeah.
But the name comes from a Bee Gees song. It was their first number one in Australia and outside of Australia, I think. In fact, I think the story is they were on the boat to come to England when they went number one in Australia with Spicks and Specks, and they had to come back. So I need to explain that every now and again because in America, one of those words isn't a great word.
Okay.
And we
Spectacles?
Yes. There was a TV award ceremony. Sorry, I'm going off track for a sec. There was a TV award ceremony in Australia and Joan Rivers was presenting our category. And she got up on stage. How do you feel about swearing on this podcast, by the way?
I don't give a beep that out.
There we go. So Joan Rivers got up on stage.
Not as bad as the gentleman you had on telly last night.
Brian Cox.
Brian Cox. We won't go into that.
I have a theory. Right, I'm going off on two tangents now. So Brian...
By the way, I go off on tangents all the time. And it's up to you, the audience at home, to follow my conversation. And you, my guest, if I say to you, what was I saying?
Going off on tangents?
Yeah. So your tangents?
Got it. So my tangent is we had Brian Cox on the last leg on Friday night who dropped the C-bomb 3 times.
Do you know he's the genius boss of Succession?
Yes, that Brian Cox, yes. Beat the record held by Miriam Margolyes. But what was interesting is both of them, after dropping the C-bomb, came over to me in an ad break and went, I'm too old to care anymore. I really don't care. So my theory is more older people on television because they just cut loose. So Joan Rivers was on stage at an Australian TV Awards ceremony handing out the award for our category, entertainment show or something like that. And she got up on stage and basically went, hello, I don't know who the fuck any of you people are. And big round of applause. Who is this? Who the fuck are you? To her co-host and the audience saying, oh my goodness, she's swearing on live TV. And then she went to read through the names of the shows listed and she got to Spicks and Specks and went, oh, I can't say that word on television. I'm like, oh, that's the thing you've stopped at? So that's why I always feel like I have to explain, even to the point where the TV show had an app, a Spicks and Specks app that was available online and was at Apple, iTunes, censored it because they thought it was offensive. I remember at the time making the joke, it turns out you can be Mac and PC at the same time.
And you also did the Adam Hills Tonight programme?
Yes.
In Australia. In the UK, you're the boss of The Last Leg with Josh Widdicombe and Alex Brooker. Are they any good?
I carry them.
Are they passable? It's a lovely... I love that show.
I don't know if you've had experience of being in a comedy trio, but...
I know I've had that. No. No idea what you're talking about.
It's like a wonderful marriage.
Yeah. So me too. You started stand-up at the age of 19.
Yeah.
Did you?
Yeah.
Wow.
And at that, like now, a lot of people start stand-up, when they're quite young. But I mean, for me, it was 89. I was the youngest on the circuit at that point. Yeah.
Very, very strong. And you played the Melbourne International Comedy Festival?
I mean, I've probably performed at the Melbourne Comedy Festival 14 or 15 times.
Oh, okay.
But Ali, my wife Ali does a variety show on the
we'll get to her in a minute.
Okay, so I've done a few shows with her.
She is very interesting.
Yeah.
Montreal, where my wife was born.
Was she?
Did you know that?
I didn't know that.
Rowena was born, and you did Just for Laughs Festival.
Yep.
Right. That's why we want to go over there, and she can see where her dad's buried. A guy called Mark Critch. Ever heard of Mark Critch? He said he's son of a Critch telly program.
Right.
It's a great program.
Oh, really? No,
it's got that wonderful actor from the Clockwork Orange.
Oh, wow. Right.
Malcolm McDowell.
Yeah.
He's the grandfather in it.
Oh, wow. No.
Oh, son of a Critch. Get that one.
Okay.
That's why we've got to get over there, because he found Rowena's dad's grave. He's buried in Montreal. In Montreal. And you've done the Edinburgh Festival Fringe. When did you do that? Was it in the 60s?
The first one was... That's a really good question. 97, I think.
Oh.
Do you know what? I was such a regular at the Edinburgh Fringe at one point that at the end of the year, the List magazine released their top 10 favourite Scots of the year, and I think I was number 4. just behind Sean Connery.
Yeah, Aussie Scot. In 2002, you had a minor hit in Australia with a working class anthem single.
Mm-hmm.
To support firefighters.
Yeah, that was... So there's a...
How did it go?
There's a well-known Australian song called Working Class Man by a guy called Jimmy Barnes.
Okay.
The best way to describe him to international people, he's probably our closest thing to Bruce Springsteen.
Oh.
And I realised that you could sing the words of the Australian national anthem to the tune of Working Class Man.
Okay.
And so I tried to release it as a single with a whole bunch of comedians on board. It went okay, but it's one of those things that I'm relatively well known for online now.
Oh, good.
The clip of me doing it many years ago. Oh. So has gone viral. In fact, I'm genuinely toying with whether or not my next show, my next live show, might be just me going through different national anthems from around the world. Because I've got...
Peter Kay does a form of that.
Does he?
Yeah.
Well, I've done the Canadian national anthem to the tune of Summer of 69 by Bryan Adams.
Okay.
I can do the German national anthem to 99 Luftballons by Nina. And then, of course, the name of the show will be Adam and the Anthems.
Okay.
So it kind of...
I've got to ask you about that later.
Yep.
Now, did you get a Bachelor of Arts at Macquarie
University?
University?
Yep. Bachelor of Arts in Mass Communications. Ooh. Studied film, radio, television.
Ooh. And did you get the Alumni Award in 2018?
Oh, yes. I still don't know what that is, but yes, I did.
Yeah. I've got no idea what it is, but I got it.
I've got it at home.
There you go. We're back to your wife, Ali, was and is an opera singer, opera soprano?
Yeah.
Yeah. And did she run away with the circus?
She kind of did.
Yeah.
So she had read that back in the day in Covent Garden, the opera singers would finish their amazing operas and then go backstage, take off their clothes, their costumes.
We'll go into that, Adam.
Well, they would then go into a cabaret club in their corsets and they would sing opera to the masses rather than, the toffs.
Oh, great.
And so Ali always had this idea, she loved that idea of opera for masses. Yeah. And so she was performing at, I think it was the Melbourne Arts Centre doing an opera. Yeah. And then next door was the Spiegel tent doing a cabaret night. And so she took some of the singers in there and then performed. And then she then would perform that as a regular show called the Opera Burlesque. where she and two other opera singers would basically do, opera for the plebs.
Yeah, very, very good. In research for Who Do You Think You Are?
Yes.
Is it true they found your ancestor had been a German burgher, i.e. you're married to Ali McGregor, a Scottish girl, so you could be called a Big Mac? Do you see where I went there? Was it worth it?
It was totally worth it. It was totally worth it. This is why I think you and I have got along so well, because
I'm daft.
Yes, but I can see that gleam in your eye when you've got a joke brewing, and I almost stepped all over it then. I have to apologise. We've both got that. I think I said right before we started recording, it's like comedy Tourette's. Yes, the joke's there and you have to say it.
Well, Liverpudlians have that terrible curse of having this non-stop sense of humour.
Right.
When we go down to our grave, as they put the lid in, there'll be something not too tight, whatever we say. We'll follow it, we'll go to our grave. I heard one Scouser he'd played at his funeral. They put him dutifully there. He's well dead, in his coffin, lower him into the grave, and he said, "Can you please play this tape after you've lowered me into the grave?" So dutifully, all sitting down, all that. And so they play the tape. "Get me out of here!" Knock, 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 knock. Oh dear. Now, you helped set up Warrington Wolves.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Physical Disability Rugby League team.
Yeah, so I grew up in Sydney playing rugby league when I was a kid, because that's the biggest sport in Sydney. And so I played it up until I was about 12 or 13. And I think at that point, having a prosthetic leg made it difficult to keep up with the other kids, but also I felt bad because if someone tried to tackle me, this really solid leg was doing them more damage than it was doing me.
I hadn't thought of that aspect.
So I kind of steered away from rugby league for years, and then about 2017 I found out that Warrington were wanting to set up a disability rugby league team. Yeah. And I contacted them and said, "Look, can I help and can I play?" And I just became obsessed by it. I loved it for a number of reasons. Firstly, I got back into rugby league. Yeah. I'd never played as part of a team before. And there's a really interesting dynamic, especially with a rugby league team, because if you and I are trying to tackle that guy over there,
that one over there,
that guy over there is running straight at us, and you and I have got to tackle
Joshua Michael. Yeah, we'll go for him.
We've got to work together.
Yeah.
We've both got to put our bodies on the line, and we've got to trust each other.
I'll put my tin leg on. He's going down.
Damn right. But so I found this really interesting thing, but what I've also found was I still felt bad about people trying to tackle my prosthetic.
Okay.
So I bought a couple of MMA mixed martial arts shin pads, put one on the front and one on the back. Yeah. And that way, if anyone tackled me, there was padding around it, so it wasn't hurting them. But then another guy turned up to our team with a prosthetic leg, and he didn't put any padding on it. And I said, "Are you not worried?" And he went, "I don't care, it's the other team." I was like, "Oh yeah, right."
Now, is it true you played for them, that team, in the World Cup? Keep going, Mike. In the World Club Challenge against South Sydney.
Yes.
Winning 34-12.
So
against your hometown of Sydney. That must have gone down well.
It was when I was 3 days old, my dad brought a red and green toy rabbit into the hospital to support the South Sydney Rabbitohs rugby league team, because that was his team and it was my granddad's team. So literally since the age of 3 days old, I was a South Sydney Rabbitohs fan. And in fact, the reason I got into Disability Rugby League was because someone tweeted me saying, "Did you hear that South Sydney have a disability team?" So they were the first people I called. And I said, can I help and can I play? And the guy went, "You live in London, right?" I went, "Yeah." And he went, maybe contact Warrington. So my plan originally was I'd go and play for Warrington, and then we'd set up an exhibition game against the Rabbitohs, and I would play for South Sydney.
Right.
But after playing with these group of guys in Warrington, and like I said, you put your body on the line, you get bruised and battered for each other. Mad. I couldn't play against them. Yeah. So when we went out to Australia and we played against the Rabbitohs, it was the weirdest thing. In fact, I was talking to Russell Crowe about it, because Russell Crowe owns the Rabbitohs. Oh. But I also know Russell. Oh, okay. And I was talking to him and I was saying, I don't know who to play for. And he was really good. He went, mate, if you play for South Sydney, you've got to earn it. Okay. So you can't just put on the jersey and run out with the team. You've got to train with them. You've got to bleed with them. You've got to sweat with them.
Yeah.
He said, you need to play with the team that you've sweated and bled for. And I was like, okay. And then he said, tell you what, how about I sponsor you a little bit, the Rabbitohs sponsor you, and you can have the rabbit on your chest. So you can have the wolf on one side, the rabbit on the other, and you can play for both. And he was there when we did it, when I came off the pitch. He tapped my chest and said, it looks good on you.
Excellent. In 2020, Australia Post released a set of stamps of Australian legends of comedy, and you were on a bloody stamp. I could lick you and post you anywhere.
Yep.
Wow.
And the great thing about
kids must have loved that.
When you lick the back of a comedian stamp, it tastes funny. No, it was such a weird... And you know what? It was also one of those things where it was right before COVID. Right. Just as COVID hit, it was announced. And I was chuffed. I was over the moon. That there was, the three other comedy legends were... I have to remember, I think it was Magda Szubanski, who... What? Magda Szubanski plays the mum in Babe. You know the movie Babe about the little talking pig?
Oh, yes.
Yes, she's the farmer's wife in Babe.
Okay.
And she's amazing. She's also Kath and Kim. There's a great TV show called Kath and Kim.
Yeah, I vaguely remember that, yeah. Great name.
Was a woman called Nolene Brown who was huge in the 60s and 70s in Australian television comedy. Yeah. I think they went decade by decade. And then there was a guy called Gary McDonald who created a character called Norman Gunston, who, the best way I can describe him... I
don't know that name, Norman Gunston.
Yeah.
He was outrageous, wasn't he?
Yes. Yeah. He was like Ali G, but 20 years before Ali G in Australia. Yes.
Norman Gunston.
Yeah.
He was just...
Famously interviewed Muhammad Ali and Boy George. And, yeah. So the four of us were on these stamps, and they had said, we're going to have a big presentation and we'll have all the four of you there. And I thought, this is amazing with my comedy heroes. And then COVID hit, and then we never had the presentation. But the upside of that was, because it was COVID, people were getting so many things delivered.
Yeah.
And then at one point, I ordered, I think it might have been a jigsaw puzzle. I can't quite remember. It was quite a big package. And it came with 20 of my faces on the front.
Okay, I can top that.
Yeah.
Have you got a jigsaw of yourself?
No.
I have.
Really?
The McGear album. I've got it upstairs in the cupboard.
Of the album cover?
Of that, me lying down or sitting up in the River Mersey, and they made a jigsaw of me.
All right, tangent. Let's go off on a tangent now. Okay.
I always do.
After meeting you in Bristol, I remember I sat on the train on the way back to London and I listened to the McGear album.
Oh, good.
And loved it. And I still think Chappell Roan has ripped off the introduction to Leave It for Red Wine Supernova. So that's another deep dive that we can go to.
Did you get that?
Chappell Roan. So I've listened to it and I've watched the video for Leave It, which I love.
Oh, great. Then my wife was a bit perturbed because she said, it's not a lady's bottom.
Oh.
She goes, there's a young lady that's in a diaphanous robe.
Yes.
But that's all she's got on.
Yes.
And so she's prancing through the gardens, leave it. She's gone to Hawaii, etc. But you'll see on one speck as she goes, and I had to look at it just to check for my wife.
Of course.
Obviously.
Yeah.
And you actually can see her bottom and her bum.
That would have been quite racy for...
Unbelievable.
But, so here's my point though.
That.
I don't know what the album cover looks like because I've only listened to it on Spotify.
Ah.
And so Do you know what I mean?
Let's put it this way. It's magnificent.
I'm sure.
Yeah. If you wanted to have an album cover, choose the McGear album.
Right.
It's got him like a Lilliputian guy laid down on, and I swear, I went down to London to have my photograph taken for the album cover. And so go to this guy, young lad, and a great photographer, and probably David Bailey or something. But there I go, right now. And I've got to be Lilliputian. Yeah, it's all set up. Lie down there on that board, and then we'll come back. We'll go to the pub next.
Right.
I said, well, isn't it better to get the shot done now? No, it's all right. And I'll tie you up, etc. And then knock all these nails in, tie you down so you can't get out, and then I'll take the picture. And so, okay, so I went to the pub and came back, and he started to tie these, literally, the rope round my legs to my body, and then bang him in as he was going. As he was getting up to the vital bit here, I was a bit worried about my future lineage. And that was the reality of that. And now, so it's a good cover.
Now you say that, I have seen that. I didn't realise. I've seen that photo. I didn't realise it was the cover. It's a lost art, album covers.
It is. Well, wait to see the cover of Scaffold Box Set.
Oh, really?
You'll like that.
Okay.
That's a nice one. In 2022, you were granted permanent residency in the UK. Mm-hmm. Does this mean we're stuck with you forever?
Yes.
It does.
I literally have.
Unbelievable.
It's called an indefinite leave to remain. The word indefinite is the one that needs to be underlined there.
Absolutely.
I can stay for as long as I want.
Good Lord. Can I go to Australia and get the same?
Oh. Oh, you have to pass the citizenship test, which is what I did. I studied and... Yeah, it was ridiculous.
I can speak Australian.
You got it?
No. Cobber?
Right. I mean...
Now, far more important. Let's get down to brass tacks here.
Yeah.
Is it true you're a Guinness record holder for the fastest time to put on 5 jumpers with Alex and Josh?
Yeah. It was the year before's Christmas show. We decided, I don't know where we'd seen it, that there was someone had attempted to put on as many Christmas jumpers as they could in a minute. And then we contacted Guinness and said, well, what kind of record could we come up with? And they said, well, what about a team event? How quickly can 3 people put on 5 Christmas jumpers each? And I think they gave us 30 seconds, or maybe 35 seconds, and we did it in 34 seconds.
Yeah.
I mean, I think they're desperate for awards now at Guinness. Yeah. They need the publicity.
Now, there's rumours that you are a huge fan of Adam, I wonder why, Ant. Mm-hmm. True? Expand.
So I think...
I'll have more red wine. Do you mind?
And absolutely no, I don't mind at all.
Thank you very much.
I think, musically for me, I think probably for everyone around the age of 10 or 11, you kind of discover music that's not the music that your parents are listening to. I think...
And he looked good, didn't he?
Well, I mean, it was the first famous person I'd heard called Adam.
Oh,
so straight away I'm in.
Okay, he's in.
And not just Adam, he owns his own ants. Like, this guy must be important. He's got ants, right?
Yeah.
Adam and the Ants. I know, although I have to say, I remember the first song that I heard was Dog Eat Dog, and I was a bit disappointed. I was like, I really wanted this guy that looks like a pirate. Yeah. He's called Adam. Yeah. He's got his own band. Dog Eat Dog's good, but it's not really grabbing me. And then Ant Music came out, and I was like, you've got me now. You've got me now. And I also, the double drummers.
Yes.
I think he was really influenced by the drummers of Burundi. So that
2 Moonies.
Yeah. And then there's another song called, I think, Kings of the Wild Frontier. And it's got both the double drummers with the just...
No, very good.
So I loved all that. And I've got years... Do you know what? When I first moved to London, which was 2002, I think it was, I remember thinking, I wonder if I might see Adam Ant on the street. Maybe I'll see him on the street one day. And
see him on the tube.
yeah. And
See him down an anthole.
my manager bumped into him.
Okay.
I'd wanted to film something with him for a stand-up show, and my manager met him out and about, and he said, yeah, give him my number.
Oh, good.
And so I called him up, and he went, yeah, come round to my house.
Oh, good.
And I went round, and to be fair to him, he was having quite a manic episode at the time. I know he's had some mental health ups and downs.
Oh, okay.
And
haven't we all?
Indeed. And he wasn't...
You didn't nearly knock my red wine
I nearly knocked your red wine over.
Yeah,
that would have brought on an episode of some sort.
You know, it's an Australian Pinot Noir.
And he was lovely, but he wasn't in a good place. And years later, when I had that talk show in Australia, he came on as a guest. And I remember at the time going around to his house, and he was lovely, but definitely having a tough time. And so I thought, I'll leave him be. I hung out there for a little while, and I remember sending him a CD, one of my comedy CDs, and I left it at that, never heard from him. And then he came on my talk show.
Great.
And the show at the time was called, my stand-up show was called Go You Big Red Fire Engine.
That's
and
right.
He came on, and I said, Adam, it's lovely to meet you again. And he went, I got your CD, by the way. And I went, did you? He said, I really liked it. And he brought me...
Was that a London accent then?
It was an Adam Ant accent.
Yeah,
because
that's how he talks.
He's very quietly spoken, isn't he?
The Crows talk like that, you know?
Oh, yeah,
The
right.
Crows very high pitched.
Yeah.
Crow brothers.
Yeah.
Stab you in the neck, but very high.
And he turned up with a T-shirt, and he had some merch for me, and then he sang... I think he did Stand and Deliver on my show. I can't quite remember.
Great.
And then I remember I went and saw him in concert in Melbourne a week later. And from the stage, he said, I'm going to do a new song now. I've only ever done this once. And I did it on Adam Mills's show. He's here tonight, so if you're standing next to him, give him a kiss. I was like, oh, amazing.
So he was Australian from that accent. Go you big red fire engine.
Well, there's a story behind that too. Yeah. So... I realised, like, probably my second or third ever Edinburgh Fringe Festival, I was playing a tiny room, 50 people in a little school room, because that's what you end up in.
We started in the Travers when it was a tiny little room.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
So when was your first Edinburgh?
I'll tell you, for the first time we went there, I'll tell you how long ago it went. We're in this tiny little theatre. As the Royal Mile, as you go up there, it was tucked into one of the entries, and the jiggers. Yeah. And you just go down there, tiny little theatre. And so Scaffold did our show, and John and Rog were doing the end sketch. So I had to get up to the bar to get the drinks in. So I listened for the cue. This must be love. Whoop, up to the bar. This stone steps up to that bar. Get to the bar. And unbeknownst to me, the audience had come that way. They'd sussed it was the interval or the end, whatever. And two of them had come up there, but I got the drinks order in. A Scotch and Coke, couple of beers, blah, blah, blah. And I could feel the hatred of these two people at the end of the bar, because I got the drinks in first. And so I got the drinks, fine thing. Went to go downstairs and looked at these two people, and there was Richard Burton and Elizabeth Taylor.
Oh, wow.
That's how long ago it was.
Well, so I realised, as you would well know, in a small venue like that, you've got to put some energy in the room at the beginning of the show. And so I came up with this idea where I'd grab someone from the audience, I'd bring them up on stage, and I'd say, look, it's unfair that I get to start my job with a round of applause. Say, what do you do for a living? A teacher. Right, well, you deserve a round of applause. But then I'd go into a whole James Brown routine where I'd send them off stage, I'd introduce them to a massive round of applause, and then I'd get them to yell their own name to the crowd. Like James Brown used to go, James Brown, and the crowd would go, James Brown. So it might be,
Bill Bloggs.
Bill Bloggs, and the crowd would go, Bill Bloggs. And then I'd get him to do the, I can't go on, and collapse. And I'd throw a coat round him, and we'd walk him off stage, and then then the crowd would cheer, and then right at the end I'd whip the coat off and he'd go, Bill Bloggs, and the crowd would go, wow.
Oh, lovely.
And that took 10 minutes, and it was a great way to start the show and get some energy and everything. And then one night in Melbourne I was doing it, and the guy's name was Bob, and he was a fireman. I said, well, you definitely deserve a round of applause for being a fireman. Of course, get up here, and said the whole thing. And I went, please welcome on stage, Bob. And he came out, and I went, right, yell your name to the crowd. And to this day, I don't know why, he just went, go you big red fire engine. And the crowd went like, what? And he went, go you big red fire engine. And I went, come on. And so they all started shouting, go you big red fire engine back at him. And it went back and forth, and it was it became the catchbrise of the night. And at the end of the night, I said, I'm going to name my next show, Go You Big Red Fire Engine, in honour of you. But I didn't. But the next year I went back to Edinburgh, and I thought, well, that's a silly name for a show. No one's going to take that show seriously. I'll give it a proper name. And I think I called it Goody Two Shoes after Adam Ant. And I started getting really good reviews, and then I started getting judges coming in. You get Perrier judges coming in.
Okay.
And you can see on your audience form every night, if you look at your ticket sales, you can see how many judges have come in. And I'd have one, and then I'd have two, and then I'd have three. And I knew you had to have all 10 judges to be eligible. And so as I was getting closer to like 8, 9, and 10, I was thinking, oh my God, the pressure's on. I have to nail this show. And I was getting so stressed. I was wound up every day because I just wanted the show to be right. And a friend of mine stopped me on the street and said, oh my God, you're selling out every night. You've got 5-star reviews. You must be having a ball. And I was so tense. I was like, no, I'm not. I'm so stressed because I just want this show. And then I thought, this is ridiculous. You're doing a comedy show. I shouldn't be stressed about a comedy show. And so then I thought, do you know what? I am going to call my next show Go You Big Red Fire Engine, because then I can't take it seriously. And it doesn't matter. You're not going to get awarded for a show called Go You Big Red Fire Engine because it's silly. And then I ended up being nominated for Go You Big Red Fire Engine.
You were nominated, you got a Perrier Award, nominated for a Perrier Award.
For that particular show. Yeah. And it's all because I just stopped stressing about it and just remembered that comedy's meant to be fun.
Good, that's the correct answer. Thank you, Adam. Now, there's a rumour you like or liked it because he's dead, Michael Parkinson.
So,
keep going.
So, growing up in Australia, Michael Parkinson was huge. We had his... Sorry? The Michael Parkinson was huge. We had the TV show. And as part of my talk show, I got to interview him over here. And I remember sitting down with him. Well, actually, I'll tell you two stories. I was quite nervous. I'd interviewed Jerry Hall the day before.
Okay.
And then I sat down to interview Michael Parkinson, and I said to him, I'll be honest, I'm a little bit nervous about interviewing you. And he was so lovely. He looked across at me and he said, you should never be nervous about interviewing an interviewer because we know what you want and we know what you're looking for. And so we'll try and give it to you. And he was lovely. He was so lovely. And he took us to lunch. He took me and the producer to lunch at one of his restaurants afterwards.
Okay. Keep going.
And then after that, the producer said, just to let you know, we've had a complaint about the Jerry Hall interview.
Oh, great.
And I was like, why? And he explained why, and I was mortified. And I don't think I've ever talked about this. So, Jerry Hall, I was, quite nervous to interview. And I had this idea where I thought, I read all about her. I did the research like you did. And then I thought, I'm going to ask my Twitter followers to suggest questions for Jerry Hall.
Okay.
And then I'll throw or the viewers, and I'll throw them in. Yeah. But each question was biographical. So I knew that it led to something that led to something and led to something. And so my first question to her was, so-and-so asks, what's the best tomato to use in a salad? And she just looked at me like I was an idiot. Right. And she went, why would you ask me that question? And I said,
ask me?
Because you grew up on a tomato farm.
Oh.
And she went, how did you know that? I said, because I researched. And she went, oh. And I said, okay. So the interview seemed to be going fine.
Good.
Now, we got to a moment about her play that she was in. And here's how I had wanted the moment to play out. I had read somewhere that she had said, performing on stage doing a play is better than having sex, and you get to do it 6 times a week.
Okay.
And so I thought, I'll set her up for that.
Oh, good.
Right? I'll say that, she'll say that, laugh, let's move on.
Yeah.
And then I thought, well, actually my tag can be, well, in my case, I get the same reviews afterwards. Not very believable, slightly wooden. Nice little joke, nice little self-deprecating joke about myself and my prosthetic leg. So I said to her, you've said that performing on stage is better than having sex. And then she looked at me with those amazing Jerry Hall eyes and just went, well, it depends who the sex is with. And I lost all power of speech and went, and then I said, and the reviews are the same, not very believable, slightly wooden. Now, I didn't say my reviews were the same. It made it sound like I was saying that about her.
Okay.
And she had previously had some bad reviews about her acting.
Okay.
So she thought I was making a joke about her acting skills. And to fair play to her, she smiled through the rest of the interview and at no point flinched or showed that she was upset. But the next day, her manager said, can you edit that bit out? Because Jerry was actually quite upset. And I was like, oh my God, that's not what I meant at all. So I sent this big email back saying, I'm so terribly sorry. It was meant to be a self-deprecating joke. I mean, how do you explain? I got really flustered because you're so sexy. But my producer purposely didn't tell me that before I interviewed Michael Parkinson, because he knew that there's no way I would have gone through the interview. I'll have completely lost all faith in myself. Now, are we swapping Billy Connolly stories later, or are we heading towards them?
Go for it.
Because, you know, like I've only found out today. I mean, it doesn't surprise me that you're friends with Billy.
Well, we go back to the Edinburgh Festival in the 60s. Right. When he was in a group called the Humble Bums.
Yeah.
He was singing, he wasn't doing comedy then.
Wow.
He was singing, and we got on famously.
Yeah.
And I then came to Liverpool, and he put these, I think it was Cop Your Whack, an album called Cop Your Whack.
Right.
Cop Your Whack.
Yeah.
From Glasgow, what's the famous Glasgow theatre? Glasgow Empire or something.
Yeah.
There's a Glasgow theatre that you die in. If you're a comedian. And the first thing he does is all the whole of Glasgow is in front of him. And he says, he goes on, this is live on an album called Copy Whack. And he says, he says, the bears are in tonight. That's the start. And so he came down to Liverpool from Glasgow, and I was doing a show for Radio City in Liverpool Radio at that time. And I said, this guy called Billy Connolly, you've never heard of him, but he's coming down to Liverpool, and he sold out the Empire. Now that, for a complete unknown, to sell the Empire out but doesn't matter what, if you can get a ticket somehow, if you can see him, listen for the future, he is a force to be, he is something special. Right. Yeah.
So clearly I grew up, you know, the pick of Billy Connolly, like listening to the albums. And then when I had just started doing stand-up comedy, I went to see him at the Sydney Opera House.
Okay.
But as I walked up to the Opera House, he was out the front looking in the guest shop. And I thought, I've got to go up and say hello. And I went, Mr. Connolly, I'm here to see you do a show tonight. And I said, do you get nervous? And he went, not so much nervous as anxious. You know, I just want to be on there. And this other comedian walked up who was doing a show in the like the studio part of the Opera House. And he came up to me and he went, oh, Adam, you're here to see us tonight? And I went, no, I'm here to see this guy. And he went, ah! And he kind of said to Billy Connolly, I remember him saying, oh, we're doing a show downstairs if you want to come watch. And Billy said, no, I don't watch other comedians because I accidentally steal their material. I'll be on stage like a month later and I'll say something and go, that's not mine. And he was so generous. And he went, and then Pat went, oh, but we'll probably steal your stuff. And he went, oh, feel free. If you see something, take it, you know. So that was the first.
May I
meeting
say,
with him.
your Billy Connolly accent is to be admired.
Oh, thank you. As it's with, do you know what? I felt pressure after you did your Billy Connolly accent. I was like, I've got to step up here.
Well, no, he rang the other night from Florida.
Really?
Yeah, it was one of those things where, hello, mate. I said, who's that? He says, Billy. I said, Billy who? He says, Billy Connolly. I said, are you joking? And he said, no, it's Billy. It was just for a chat.
How is he?
Stayed on for an hour or so.
Oh, wow.
And Ro had gone to bed.
Yeah.
All on my own, just us two talking.
Amazing.
After a million years about nothing.
Well, next time say hi to him from me, because, so that was the first little meeting.
Right.
And then a couple of years later, I was in Adelaide working in radio for a radio station. And he was in town performing, and they had this competition of people get to go backstage and meet him after a gig. And the boss of the station said, I know you love comedy, why don't you take the people? So I went and watched him, and then I took them backstage, and his manager came out and said, look, don't tell Billy that these are competition winners, because then he just feels like a piece of meat.
Right.
So, all right. So he came out and he was, hello, and everyone else just clammed up. They were so nervous, and no one spoke. And he said to me, someone said, oh, this is a guy from a radio station. He went, oh, thanks for your support. Do you enjoy doing the radio? And I went, oh, I'm actually a stand-up comic. And he went, oh, and instantly put his arm around me. What did you think of my show? I went, oh, it was amazing. I loved it. And he went, oh, and he just was, you'll find it gets easier as you go along, you know. Silence is your best friend. If they're silent, they're listening. If they're coughing, they hate you. Like, he was telling me all this advice. Then I said, can I get a photo? And he was like, yeah. And I always remember this bit. It was a camera. It was an actual camera where you had to click it and the flash came up, and then you had to wait for the flash to warm up. And so we're standing there waiting for the flash to warm up, and he just said, oh Christ, the amount of time in your life you'll spend waiting for a punter's flash to warm up. Like as if he was going, you're going to be big. Yeah. This is going to happen to you.
Oh, lovely.
So we got the photo.
Lovely.
And he said, I remember him saying, keep doing it. Never stop doing it. The world needs more comedians and less soldiers. You know, just do it.
That's a good line.
And as he walked down the hallway, he stopped and he turned back and put his fist in there and he went, just do it. Okay, so cut to...
My father's version of that is DIN. Do it now.
Do it now. So about a month after that, the boss of the radio station said to me, I said, oh, look, I'm thinking of going over to Edinburgh for the Edinburgh Fringe Festival. And he said, look, you're at a point in your career, you have to decide, do you want to be a radio announcer or do you want to be a comedian? Right. And this little voice went, just do it. So I went to Edinburgh for the first time and all of that.
Oh,
but
really?
Then, maybe 4 or 5 years after that.
So you blame Billy Connolly? Mm-hmm. Good, I'll tell him.
And then 4 or 5 years after that, I was at the Comedy Store in London. I was the last act on this particular night. Billy dropped in at interval just to watch the show. He's never been to the Comedy Store before. Oh, right. And people, oh my God, Billy Connolly's here, Billy Connolly's here. And I said, well, firstly, ask him if he wants to come backstage after the show, make him feel welcome. And then I went out as the last act of the night. And I remember that night, it was Dara O'Brien, Mickey Flanagan.
Oh, good. Good night.
Yeah. Sean Mio, Mandy Mooden. I was the last act on. And I told that story, and I told the just do it story, and just do it. And like the whole audience could see him. He was right under a light, in the middle of the crowd. And I went, so, Billy, I just want to say, I did it. Oh, good. I'm here because of you. So thank you. And, you know, he got a standing ovation and went backstage, and he came backstage and he went, you did it. You did it. It was hugs all around. And he was so lovely to everyone. Good. Like, picked a piece of everyone's act that he admired. Yeah. Oh, I loved when you did that. I loved that. Got photos with us all. And then at the very end of the night, a friend of mine had been performing in Rent across the road, a guy called Mig Aisa, who I went to college with. And I'd said to Billy, I'd left him backstage and went, sorry, I've got to go. A friend of mine's in Rent. I'm going to meet him across the road and he's going to come here. So I walk up the stairs, call my girlfriend at the time, who's back in Australia, and went, you're not going to believe this. Billy Connolly's just come backstage. Right. And then Billy walks past and says, oh, I'll see you later. And I went, oh, can you say hi to my girlfriend? So he gets on and goes, hello, who's this? I'm Billy Connolly. I'm very busy. Meanwhile, my friend Mig walks in from Rent. Right. And he's like, Adam. And I went, Mig, hey. And he's like, "It's Billy Connolly." And I was like, and Billy hangs up the phone and then goes, "There's your phone back," and looks at Mick and goes, "Are you the guy in Rent? Congratulations," and gives him a hug.
Lovely.
So it was this, and then he walked back up the stairs and, "You did it, you did it." I mean, amazing. I thought that was the end of the story. And I had told that story probably on stage a few times, and I don't know how it had got out. And then a few years after that, someone from ITV called me up and said, "We're making a show about Billy Connolly and about the influence of Billy Connolly. And we're talking to comedians who've been influenced by him." And I went, "Oh my God, I've got a great Billy Connolly story for you." And he said, "Oh, I know, Billy told us." I was like, "Sorry, what?" He said, "We've already interviewed Billy, and he said you should talk to Adam Hills because he's got a really funny story about me."
I heard him telling the same story, not your story,
Right.
but to somebody else when I walked into his dressing room once. He says, this is Mike here. And I stayed at his house once, in this house, through that there.
Right.
You ever you go into his Billy Connolly room.
Oh, wow.
And he told him, I once stayed at Mike's. This is with the drinking days.
Right.
And he said, I stayed at Mike's once. And he tells a story about when he came into my bedroom to get me on the road again. And there on the wall was socks. He said, Mike said, there was his levitating socks. And there was a sock. He'd found the whole brown wall then as one brick sticking out.
Yeah.
And he'd found the one brick to put his socks on. So there were these socks levitating up the wall. And there's him telling this man of the story about his levitating socks.
Well, many years after that, a friend of mine called Kathy Lett is very good friends with Billy. And she gave me his email address. And I just wanted to drop him a line and say, listen, I just want to say thank you for popping up throughout my career when I most needed it. I think I referred to him as my hairy godmother. And I just got a wee email back from him saying, "Dear Adam, your success makes me very happy. It couldn't happen to a nicer Aussie." Good. So I've always kept that. So yeah, send him my love the next time you talk to him.
I will. No, I'm not going to ask you about Buddy Pendergast.
There's not much to that.
I'm not going to ask you about. He was in Thunderbirds Are Go.
Oh, actually, I could tell you a story about that.
Yeah, go on.
So they wanted it to be, they wanted this character in Thunderbirds Are Go to be a bit like Steve Irwin.
Okay.
The crocodile hunter.
Yes, that's right.
And I used to do an impersonation of him anyway. Right. But I had a really interesting thing. I only remembered this recently, actually. So I performed at the Logie Awards, the Australian Logie Awards one year. I was hosting it. And it was the year that Steve Irwin was being given the Lifetime Achievement Award. And so I did a whole routine about him. Basically, I did a routine about him, imagining him as Gladiator for some reason. I don't know why, but like, oh, crikey, there's a tiger right behind me. And the routine went relatively well. And his wife and his wife was in the room, and it was all fine. And then the next day there was an article in the paper that said that she left the ceremony halfway through. And then someone had blamed me for it.
Oh, I see.
And I felt awful. I was like, oh my God. And then about a week later, I got an email from her assistant saying, Terry's been on holidays. She's only just seen the news. She just wants you to know that your routine she loved your routine. And Steve would have loved your routine because Gladiator was his favourite movie.
Oh, good.
But ever since then, we've become friends. Like the Irwins, Terry and the kids, Bob and Bindi, Robert. Whenever they're in town, we all catch up together. I get birthday cards from them. They're the loveliest people. So then when they asked me to do Buddy Pendergast, it was only for 2 episodes. I thought, well, if they want a Steve Irwin type character, I'm going to do my Steve Irwin impersonation, but it's going to come from a place of love. So it was a little bit of a tribute to him.
It was okay. So you've done 2 books.
Yep.
Best Foot Forward.
Yes.
And a children's book called Rockstar Detective.
Yep.
What's your 3rd book you're working on?
Well, funny. So I've done 3 Rockstar Detectives books.
Oh, 3.
So I did Rockstar Detectives and then Rockstar Detectives Murder at the Movies. So it came about because my daughter, when she was 8, my eldest, when she was 8, very quite po-faced, said to me, "Daddy, I can't decide when I grow up if I want to be a rock star or a detective." I was like,
that's it.
"We'll do both. Like, imagine being a rock star at night and solving crimes by day." And then thought, well, that's a good idea for a book. So I wrote that as the first book. And then she said, "I really liked it, but can someone die in the second one?" So the second one was Murder at the Movies. And then the third one was Trouble at the Track, which was set at the Paralympics.
So in fact, your children are the real reason you're making all this money out of children's books. It's not you, it's your children.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
And
you had admitted that on television.
Yeah. And I've said to them one day, I said, right, let's divide the money that I get from the children's books between you guys.
That was a joke.
No, I know, but I was serious about it, and they were serious about it. And then
they would be.
Fair play to them. They said, well, we'll take some of it, but how about we give some to charity as well? Ooh. So I've donated to various, like one musical charity in Australia called the Song Room, and then I think I donated to Limb Power in the UK as well. So all because of the kids.
Very good. Now then, Adam, I'm going to terminate this joyous experience, may I say.
I've loved it.
But can I point out, you haven't touched your iced coffee once, and I've been drinking this Pinot Noir the whole interview. And I'd just like to say that it was a joy having you. Yeah.
And do you know what? I think this has worked perfectly because
what has?
You've had half of a Pinot Noir and you've slowed down a little bit, and I've had half of a nice coffee.
No, I haven't.
I've sped up.
I'm not a bad drunk either.
If you watch this interview back, you'll notice that I've started to get quite animated towards the end of it as the coffee has kicked in. And I mean, I know you're about to run out of battery, but I'm at the point now of going, no, let's do more. Let's do more. I've got a bit of a coffee buzz going on now.
Thank you, pal.
Been a pleasure.
Thank you, family.
Yeah, thank you, family. What are we called? The McHillsneys? Is that what we came up with?
Yeah, that's right. Great.